I was a professional voiceover artist. I did commercials.
Cool.
I know. All right. Welcome to Crime Time. We're your hosts, Smith Henderson.
And Hadley Henderson. I almost said Madeleine McCann.
Anyway, we've been investigating the case of Madeleine McCann, who is a missing 5-year-old girl from the United Kingdom who disappeared in 2007. Hadley, maybe you can tell us about the basics of the case.
5-year-old Madeleine McCann disappeared on May 3rd of 2007 at a holiday resort in Praia da Luz, Portugal, while on vacation with her family.
And she wasn't just with her immediate family, right?
No, they were traveling with family friends, and there was 9 parents and 8 children in total.
Oh, wow.
So they had a big group.
Was she the youngest, the oldest? Where was she? Do you remember? Yeah.
I don't know how old the other kids were, but she had 2 siblings who were each 1 year
Yeah,
old,
they were sleeping in a...
really young.
Yeah, because the case is kind of interesting because the kids were sleeping in... They had these different kinds of sleeping arrangements, and it seems like there were the 2 youngest ones were twins, right? 1-year-old. Mm-hmm. They were sleeping in a crib, and there's some interesting stuff about whether them not waking up at some point. But why don't you tell us the basics about the events on the night in question when she vanished?
So the parents every night would go to this small restaurant across the pool from the McCann's apartments. So it was fairly close, and they could see the back of the apartment from the restaurant, but there was trees and bushes in the way. Mm-hmm. And they had been doing this routine for a few days prior, so they were pretty familiar with it. And at 8:35, all of the parents put their kids to bed, and they left for dinner. And every 30 minutes to an hour, the parents would go to check on the kids, so to make sure they weren't missing.
Right.
But
and there was a number of times during dinner when one of the parents said, I'm going to go check on the kids, and they would sometimes just check on only their kids. There were other times where a certain parent would check on all the kids. So you got a lot of different... I remember in our research discovering there are a lot of different accounts of exactly what happened and the timeline of things. The parents were having a lovely dinner. They were drinking some alcohol, but they felt safe because they could see the apartment where their kids were, and they were checking fairly regularly. So what happened, there was an interesting moment where the father, I believe, went into the apartment before Madeleine was missing. So tell us about that, because it's kind of interesting.
Okay. So that night, the Madeleine's father, Jerry McCann, was the first to go and check on any of the kids. Uh-huh. And so at 9:05 p.m., Jerry McCann checked on only his kids. And on the way back, he stopped to talk to one of his friends that wasn't traveling with the group, but maybe he knew from the apartment or something, I'm not sure, but he stopped to have a conversation with one of his friends. And then one of the other parents traveling with them, Jane, had gone to check on her kids. And while walking past, she had seen Jerry McCann talking with one of his friends, but he never saw her or anything, so we don't know if that's true.
Right, and then there was also an interesting thing with the doors to the apartment that the McCanns were staying in.
Oh, so with the doors, they only left the back door open, and they kept the front door locked. And it was a glass backsliding door, but they kept the front door locked and the back door open. And that's how... And the McCann's apartments, when they were first... They stayed in apartment 5A, which was on the corner of the block by some trees and stuff. Mm-hmm. And when they got their apartment assigned to them, they were warned that apartment was prone to robbery
Oh wait, that I didn't remember hearing that. That's interesting.
Yeah.
So they were given a warning not to
Yes.
to be aware that they're potentially the place they were staying could have an incident.
Yes, because it was like on the corner of the street, and it was like by a bunch of trees and bushes, so it was like hidden and stuff.
Yeah.
They were told it was prone to burglary.
Interesting. So there were a few more incidents that are interesting in this case, even before Madeleine was discovered missing. Why don't you tell us about those?
Okay, so as we were talking about earlier, Jane was walking to check on her kids, and she said that while she was doing that, at the end of the block, she saw a man walking quickly opposite from the apartments, carrying a little girl aged 3 to 4 in pink PJs and laying limply in his arms. But she didn't think much of it at the time, so she just went and checked on her kids and went back to dinner.
It is very strange that she would see someone carrying a limp child and not think anything of it. What do you think that's all about?
Well, I mean, maybe she, thought that someone was carrying their child to bed or something.
Yeah,
and
okay.
It's just a father and his daughter.
Right. And then when you realize that a child is missing, you think, oh, something much worse was happening when you put it in that context. Okay.
So after Jane got back, then at 9:30, Kate offered to go check on all of the kids, but Matthew said that he would go and check on her kids with all of the others.
So he went to check on the kids, and what happened?
Matthew said that he would go and check on all of the kids, and then when he was questioned about it, he said that he didn't remember much of the night, and that he thinks that he saw Madeleine there, but he didn't know, and it was just kind of fishy, but they brushed it off, I guess. He wasn't really a harsh suspect or anything.
Right, but he didn't have a very good memory of seeing Madeleine or not. So that kind of affects a little bit of our sense of when she went missing, right?
And Kate, wanted to go check on her kids, but Matthew was like, no, I'll go check on the kids for you.
Yeah.
And he did, we think, but
didn't, because he didn't actually see Madeleine.
Yeah. So.
Yeah. But they never quite get clarity on exactly how many minutes elapse between each parent going, right? It's very vague because they're all having dinner and they're drinking and they're talking and they're having a nice time, right?
Yeah, some of them would say, they would go and check on their kids every 20 minutes, and then some would say every hour to hour and a half they would go and check on their kids. It was very vague. Okay. Then after Matthew got back, then at 10, Kate did go check on her kids, and as she went in, she saw that her children's bedroom door was more open than she remembered, but she was like, oh, it was probably Matthew checking on the kids and he just left it more open. And then when she went to go into the room, it slammed back shut on her, and she looked around the room to see if any of the other windows were open, but they weren't. So she opened the door and she saw that Madeleine wasn't there. So then she went and checked her room to see if Madeleine had just gotten up, and she wasn't there. So she went back to the kids' room and she saw that their bedroom window was open, and that's when she panicked.
Okay, I want to repeat everything real quick, make sure I understand it correctly. So Madeleine's mother, Kate comes back to the apartment. She sees the door is slightly open. The kids' bedroom door is more open than usual. She doesn't see any other signs of a disturbance, but just that door is slightly open. She goes in, sees that Madeleine is not in her bed, but the twins are in the crib. she goes and thinks, she's probably mounting panic. Where's my daughter? Where's my daughter? She's probably in the bedroom. I'm going to go in the bed. She must be in the bedroom. She goes in there. Not in there. Now she's really scared.
The outside shutters were also open, which
That's
she
right.
noticed.
Yeah, okay. And so she goes to the bedroom, finds out that Madeleine's not there, comes back into the room, and as obviously as any parent would do, is freaking out. What does she do next?
Then she runs back to all of the parents, and she's shouting that someone took Madeleine, and Madeleine's gone, and then everyone's panicking, and they all go back to the apartment to try to look for her because all of the other parents are like, maybe she's just hiding in there somewhere. Sure. Maybe she's around there. And Kate already knows, like, she checked it. She's not there. But they still all go in and, like, check the whole place, and she's not there.
Something interesting is going on while they're doing this. One of the things that happens is Kate closes the window, right?
Yes, she closes it.
But there was a report later when the police got involved that the fingerprints didn't match up in some way. Do you remember that detail?
So, since Kate did, at least we think, close the window, her fingerprints were on there, but there weren't any other fingerprints found on the window.
That's right. Okay. The other thing that was sort of interesting that was going on during all of this was you had how many adults? Nine adults, and however many kids were probably still sleeping. There's an interesting anecdote about the sleeping going on here, but they're all running around the apartment looking for Madeleine. What are they doing to the crime scene?
They're destroying it. Just absolutely any evidence there is gone.
Let's take a short break. All right, so the parents are freaking out, looking for Madeleine. About how long was it before the cops came? Actually, can you give us a little bit of what you know about the timeline overall? Like, they went to dinner about 8:35 or something like that.
Okay, so at 8:35, the parents went to dinner.
Okay. And
then at 9:05, Jerry McCann, Madeleine's father, went and checked on his kids. Mm-hmm. And then at 9:30, Matthew went and checked on all of the kids. Mm-hmm. And then at 10, Kate went and checked on all of her kids.
Her kids.
And found Madeleine missing. And then at 10:15, the police were finally called. And at 10:30, the police arrived to it.
So the police got there pretty quick, 15 minutes, yeah. So they started dinner at 8:30. How they couldn't have known that in 2 hours they would be talking to the police about their missing child. Yeah. Wow. That must have been pretty intense. What was the scene like when the cops arrived? Not the crime scene, but paint the picture of kind of where everybody was and what was going on and the feelings people were having when the police showed up.
Kate and Jerry and all of the other parents were asking a bunch of people, like, just around and walking around the apartments, and, like, the staff and everything to just be looking for Madeleine, to just, like, continue the search for her, because she had just gone missing, and if they were going to find her, then it was going to be now. So everyone was trying to get a bunch of people to search, and one thing that was in Kate McCann's book was that this one lady, while Kate was, like, flustered and just, like, running around and everything, went up to Kate and asked her, like, what all the racket was and what was happening. And Kate said, "My daughter's missing." And the lady was like, "Oh, huh." She didn't seem to care at all or anything, and that was, Kate thought that was really odd, and she was, like, not in a good space right now, and that wasn't helping.
Yeah.
Like, the lady could have been like, "Oh, I'll help
my
you
gosh,
search
I'll help
for
you
her
find
or
her." Yeah,
something."
right.
But no, she was just like, "Oh."
Mm-hmm. So
okay.
what what did the police wind up doing? Like, what was the first thing that they did when they got on the scene?
Well, Kate and Jerry and everyone just thought of the police as the police, and they would just like search for Madeleine and everything and investigate the case. But these Portugal police, they weren't actually trained for crime scene investigation or anything. So they had to call in police forces from other areas that were actually trained in that to help them, because it was a very low crime area.
My sense was that the place where they were staying was not a very big city with a lot of crime or anything like that. It was a resort town, right? So it was kind of a small town with small town police who probably said, I haven't had something like this happen before. We got to call in for some help. Okay, so once the police arrive on the scene and they get back up with more experienced investigators, and they start combing the area and doing the kind of interviewing and all the stuff that police need to do to conduct an investigation, we start to hear some stories about sightings of Madeleine.
Mm-hmm.
What's the first one?
Okay, so the first sighting that came in was from an Irish couple that reported seeing a man carrying a little blonde girl to the beach, which was a 4-minute walk from the apartments the night that Madeleine disappeared.
Okay, so someone saw a man with a child. We also saw earlier the report of someone carrying a child in their arms.
Yes, and that man was also carrying the child, and it was reported that she was a little blonde girl.
But the interesting thing about the blonde girl is that she would stand out. So there were some other sightings. Yes. What were some other ones?
Wait.
Oh, wait, okay.
First, the main thing that made her stand out was in her eye. She had that little divot, like her pupil went out a little bit, and that's one big thing that stood out in her appearance. Right. So you would be able to recognize
so people
her.
could have identified her specifically by sight because of that unique feature in her iris. Yeah.
So the next sighting that came in was 8 hours after Madeleine's disappearance, and it was of a couple on the side of the road near the apartment complex, or holiday resort, whatever you want to call it, where the McCanns were staying, and they were with a child.
Were there any other sightings?
Yes, the last main report was a sighting of a woman handing a child wrapped in blankets to a person and putting them into the backseat of a car.
Wow. So if you put all those together, it sure sounds like she was grabbed by a man who took her, who was seen by one of the McCann's friends, Jane, saw someone with Madeleine. Then later, someone else reports seeing that same guy, theoretically, with the child. And then we see one more account of perhaps the same guy now with a woman loading the girl into the car. Yes. That sounds like it sounds like a trail. It sounds like a path, right? Well, what happens to that line of inquiry?
So, one other thing with all of these sightings that kind of sets them off just being in a straight line was that the police from the people who had the sightings of them made 2 different sketches of the possible suspects, but they both looked completely different, just completely different.
Oh, so that doesn't sound very promising. It doesn't sound like the story we thought maybe would lead to Madeleine is going to lead to her.
It could have been multiple people working together.
Sure.
We never know.
Right. But that makes the story more complicated, but it still could be true. I remember also there was a a couple that saw a little blonde girl at a gas station.
Yes, they saw her. I think she was in there by herself, or maybe with someone else, but not obvious.
Yeah.
And they didn't think much of it and just left the gas station.
Right.
But they think if they had actually looked at her and checked her eyes, seen if she
Right.
had that little insignificance, then
right.
they would have known.
The feeling was that perhaps the word didn't get out immediately enough for people to
Yes.
start looking for a missing child, and so people came in later saying, by the way, I think I may have seen this girl in this place, but it didn't get out soon enough.
Yes, I mean, it's hard for cases, small or big, to get out in the first delicate 24 hours that they're on the search.
Right.
For
Why do you
the missing person.
why do you call it the delicate 24 hours? I think that's really interesting. Tell us why that's important.
Well, if you're going to find someone who's missing or kidnapped, then they would most likely still be alive or in the area in the first 24 hours.
Right. After 24 hours, I think I've heard that
to find them so much harder.
so much harder. So at this point, let's we can come back if I jump over something, but 24 hours later, the McCanns must know this and be just terrified, right?
Yes.
And also have in their minds swirling all these different possible explanations of what happened, but they must know that she's gone missing for a not good reason.
Yeah.
But one thing I wanted to ask, there is a sort of a theory that maybe she wandered off by herself. What came of that theory?
Well, I mean, this case was in 2007, May of 2007, and if she was 5 and just wandered off from the apartment, there's not really a way that she wouldn't have been found, especially in the first 24
Sure.
hours. She would have been found immediately.
And even if she had gone to the ocean, how many minutes was their place away from?
It was a 4-minute walk, and they had been to that beach before, so she could have known the way. But if she went to the beach and drowned or something, then her body would have washed up on the shore
Yeah.
at some point.
Right. Okay. So obviously in a case like this, there's a ton of theories about what happened to Madeleine.
Yeah.
Let's run through a couple of them.
Okay.
Start whichever one seems to be prominent or
So-
interesting to you, and we'll just see how it holds up.
Okay. One main theory is that Madeleine was killed in the resort. The police cadaver dogs that smell
Dead.
dead body or blood or anything, that they picked up behind Madeleine's bed, in the parents' closet, and in the back trunk of the parents' rental car.
Wait a minute. This is pointing to the parents having murdered their child before calling the police to find their child, right? But
What?
the dog evidence is pretty hard to refute, right?
Yes, those dogs have been trained since they were born for this specific reason.
Right.
In how they alert that they've picked up a scent is by barking. And normally dogs just bark whenever they want, but these dogs only bark when they pick up a scent of blood or decomposing body.
Do we have any motive for the parents to have killed Madeleine? Or one of them?
Not really. That's
Yeah.
why they weren't suspects for very long.
Yeah. Because how mad are they going to be?
Yeah, why would they kill their 5-year-old daughter?
It doesn't make a lot of sense. There was something interesting, though, that theory that you had suggested to me, which involved Madeleine perhaps being
Accidentally
accidentally killed.
Yes, that's one thing that I think could have possibly happened.
Walk us through that. Tell us how it would have happened.
Okay, so like the day before the night that she disappeared could have just been like a normal day, and then Madeleine could have gotten hurt or something, or maybe that night she was just being fussy, so they gave her some sleeping pills, and then later they realized that they had given her too much and that she was now dead, and they didn't want to get in trouble, so they got rid of her.
There is one bit of this sounds very out there as a theory, but it is out there. But there was a little bit of hint of evidence that this could possibly be the case, wasn't it? That people did regularly in the UK, maybe Portugal, I'm not sure, sometimes give their children some kind of sedative, and it would not have been completely strange for a doctor even to give their child some medicine that they thought was safe. The only problem with that is they're doctors. How likely are they to overdose their child? But then there was another interesting little tidbit. The 2 little 1-year-olds, during all this noise, all the stuff going on, they're in the crib doing what?
Just sleeping. They never woke up.
They didn't wake up once, right?
No.
Okay.
So, yeah. And they're like little babies too. They're like each 1-year-old, so like they would wake up easily, I would assume.
You would think, right? Is there any other evidence pointing to the parents, or we have to talk about this. There was a smell. The dogs found blood and the smell of cadavers. Those are 2 different dogs finding 2 different things in
the
this
same
place.
spot too.
It could be possible, that someone could have bled in that apartment. Not even possible, likely. Someone cuts their hand or whatever. Surely someone bled in that apartment over the years. Dog might have found blood. Cadaver smell? That's decomposing human flesh that this dog is trained to smell.
Yeah, it wouldn't just pick up a false alert.
Yeah, it's not going to pick up. It's specifically trained to find that smell, which is very unique to dogs who have noses that are incredibly smart. But then it appears in the boot of the car that belongs to her parents. Where does a cadaver smell get into their car? How can we possibly explain that in any way that makes it clear that they were innocent?
Mm-hmm. That's one thing that gets me suspecting the parents, because if someone other than the parents just killed Madeleine in their apartment, then it would make sense for the closet or Madeleine's bed, but you can't really explain the back trunk of the parents' rental car.
Right.
That's
unless there have been a whole bunch of murders in Portugal in this resort town, and there's cadavers in the back of rental cars and hotel rooms all the time. But
that's not very realistic, because the police in the area aren't even trained for that.
Right.
So it doesn't happen very often, obviously. What
are some other theories about what happened with Madeleine?
Okay.
There's only one. You just want to blame the parents, don't you?
Mostly. Well, another one is that someone kidnapped Madeleine, and they had been watching the parents and the whole family on vacation for a few days prior, because they had been sticking to the same routine. The kids would go to daily clubs that they would be in most of the day, and the parents would go to tennis lessons, and then they would meet back. The parents would go to dinner, the kids would stay in the apartments, the parents would check on the kids, and then the parents would eventually come home and sleep.
There's also something that happened in the restaurant itself.
It wasn't until a year later, when I was combing through the Portuguese police files, that I discovered that the note requesting our block booking was written in a staff message book which sat on a desk at the pool reception for most of the day. This book was by definition accessible to all staff, and albeit unintentionally, probably to guests and visitors too.
If there was like anyone to walk by, then like people at the resort could easily see that they were coming there every night, and so could all of the staff and everything. Right. So they could have just been like knowing what they were doing.
But it's also that's probably true of all kinds of restaurants. I walk into a restaurant all the time and see that there's a little book sitting out. But it's true that information is there and it's possible. Were there some more theories that were interesting to you that about what happened with Madeleine that we should talk about now?
One thing that people suspected was that their whole group could have been in on it too. Which, I mean, it could be possible, but it's really hard to believe that all of them would be okay with that.
It seems a little strange unless they were part of some kind of secret cult or something.
There was 7 other parents there to get them all in on that. That would be hard.
With many young children and so on, right? I remember watching some of the interviews or an interview of a guy who was a suspect who said the parents I think it's the cat next door, or it could be the ghost of Madeleine. I don't know.
McCann trying to tell us something.
Yeah, she's like, that guy.
She's like, yes, that guy you're talking about.
That's the guy. There was somebody who said he was that the group, some members of the group that were interviewed said they saw this local Portuguese guy who were, but then he testified to the police that he was never there on that night and had people give him an alibi, and so he wasn't. But it did lead some suspicion of what you're talking about, of the group being involved, as in that they were trying to blame someone else. But it seems to me that they were just trying to find out who it could have been, and they remembered this guy, and they said, oh, there was this guy, and I think he was there that night, and you can get memories not great.
An explanation to what happened to Madeleine, where she is. They all just want to find Madeleine.
Right.